Hollywood star Matt Damon walks off The Late Show after Stephen Colbert's relentless mocking goes too far, sparking social media outrage. What began as routine promotion for Damon's latest film spiraled into one of late-night TV's most uncomfortable moments when Colbert crossed the line. The studio lights dimmed as the familiar Late Show theme music faded. Stephen Colbert adjusted his glasses, a hint of mischief visible in his eyes as he prepared to introduce his next guest. The audience, primed for entertainment, had no idea they were about to witness one of late-night television's most uncomfortable confrontations. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Academy Award winner and Hollywood A-lister, Matt Damon, Colbert announced, his voice carrying the practiced enthusiasm of thousands of celebrity introductions. The audience erupted in applause as Damon walked onto the stage, waving with his characteristic affable smile. The two men exchanged the customary handshake, but keen-eyed viewers noticed Colbert's grip was perfunctory, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Damon settled into the guest chair, posture relaxed as he prepared for what should have been routine promotion for his latest film, Deep Current, a political thriller garnering early Oscar buzz. "Matt, welcome back to the show," Colbert began, shuffling the blue cards on his desk. "It's been what, 3 years since you've graced us with your presence?" "Yeah, about that," Damon nodded, leaning forward slightly. "It's good to be back, Stephen." "Is it, though?" Colbert replied, his tone shifting abruptly. "Because I recall the last time you were here, you mentioned you were a fan of the show. Yet 3 years pass before you return. Are we just your promotional pit stop now that you have a movie to sell?" The audience's uncomfortable laughter rippled through the studio as Damon blinked, momentarily thrown by the unexpected hostility. "Well, I've been working overseas quite a bit," Damon recovered, maintaining his smile. "You know how scheduling can get, but I've always enjoyed our conversations." "Conversations," Colbert repeated, emphasizing the word with undisguised sarcasm. "Speaking of conversations, let's talk about Deep Current, another film where you play the smartest guy in the room. Do you ever tire of playing versions of yourself?" The barb hung in the air, too pointed to be playful banter. Damon shifted in his seat, his media-trained composure beginning to show cracks. "I don't think Jason Reynolds is anything like me," Damon responded, referring to his character. "He's a whistleblower who risks everything to expose government corruption. The film actually explores the moral ambiguity of—" Yes, moral ambiguity," Colbert interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "Your specialty. Almost as much as your specialty in explaining things to people. I think there should be a term for that. Maybe Damon-splaining?" The audience's reaction was mixed now. Uncomfortable chuckles interspersed with confused silence. This wasn't the good-natured ribbing they were accustomed to. Something felt off. "Look, Stephen," Damon said, his voice level but tension evident in his jaw. "If you've got an issue with me, maybe we should have discussed it before I came on air." "Issue? No issue," Colbert replied with exaggerated innocence. "I just find it fascinating how you've positioned yourself as Hollywood's moral conscience while picking and choosing your battles. Like that time you admitted you only recently stopped using certain slurs because your daughter had to explain to you why they were harmful. Progressive hero, right there." The studio temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Damon's face flushed as cameras captured his struggle to maintain composure. The reference to his past controversial comments he'd already publicly apologized for, felt calculated to provoke rather than discuss. "I've acknowledged that was wrong," Damon said quietly. "I've talked about learning and growing from mistakes. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?" "Of course," Colbert replied with a theatrical nod. "And you're very good at the public apology tour, almost as good as you were at defending certain Hollywood producers before it became inconvenient." At this, murmurs rippled through the audience. Colbert was referencing Damon's initial comments during the early days of the Dr. Me Too movement, comments Damon had later retracted and apologized for. The host was deliberately dragging past controversies into what should have been a film promotion. "Do you want to talk about the movie at all?" Damon asked, his legendary patience visibly wearing thin. "Or did you invite me here just to rehash old news cycles?" "Oh, we'll get to your movie," Colbert assured him, leaning back in his chair with the air of a predator toying with its prey. "But first, I'm curious about your production company's recent decisions. You've been very vocal about diversity and inclusion, yet your last 3 projects have featured predominantly white male leads. Interesting choice for someone so enlightened." The camera caught Damon's knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrest of his chair. The disconnect between this ambush and Colbert's usual interviewing style was jarring. Behind the scenes, producers were exchanging worried glances, wondering where this unscripted aggression was coming from. "Our company has actually produced several films with diverse casts and filmmakers," Damon responded, his tone now clipped. "Projects you're conveniently not mentioning. But I get it. Nuance doesn't make for good television, does it?" Colbert's smile thinned. "Speaking of what makes good television, let's discuss your streaming series that was canceled after 1 season. Critics called it pretentious and self-indulgent. Your thoughts?" The audience fell into uncomfortable silence as the exchange veered further from friendly banter into something resembling a cross-examination. Damon took a deep breath, visibly counting to 10 before responding. "Stephen, I'm sensing there's something else going on here," he said calmly. "Did I do something to offend you personally? Because this doesn't feel like an interview so much as an interrogation." "I'm just asking the questions viewers want answered," Colbert replied smoothly, though a flicker of something, annoyance, frustration, crossed his face. "Isn't that my job as a host? Or would you prefer the fawning treatment you get on morning shows?" "I'd prefer basic professional courtesy," Damon retorted, his famous composure finally cracking. "I've done hundreds of interviews. I can handle tough questions about my work, my views, even my mistakes. What I didn't expect was coming on your show to be treated with contempt from the moment I sat down." The tension in the studio was palpable now. Crew members exchanged glances, and the audience had grown uncomfortably quiet, witnessing what was clearly veering from entertainment into genuine conflict. "Contempt is a strong word," Colbert countered, his tone deceptively light. "Almost as strong as the words you used defending your friend's inappropriate behavior a few years back. Remember that? Or should we roll the clip to refresh your memory?" At this, Damon placed both hands on the desk, leaning forward with an intensity that caused Colbert to instinctively draw back slightly. "You know what? I think we're done here," Damon said, his voice quiet but firm. "I came to discuss a film I'm genuinely proud of, not to be ambushed with selective quotes from years ago that you know damn well I've addressed multiple times." Colbert's eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "Are you seriously walking off right now? Isn't that a bit dramatic, even for an actor?" Damon had already begun removing his microphone, his movements deliberate and controlled despite his evident anger. "I've always respected you, Stephen," he said, standing up. "I thought your show was different. I was clearly wrong." As Damon turned to leave, Colbert called after him. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems our guest isn't a fan of direct questions. Perhaps next time he'll stick to reading from the script." The camera caught Damon pausing at the edge of the stage, visibly struggling with whether to turn back and respond or continue his exit. The studio held its collective breath as the Hollywood star stood at a crossroads, dignity pulling him toward the exit, pride tempting him to return and confront his antagonist. With a deep breath, Damon turned back. The audience erupted in a mixture of applause and nervous murmurs as he walked deliberately toward Colbert's desk. The host's smug expression faltered slightly, clearly not expecting this development. "You know what, Stephen?" "No," Damon said, his voice level but intense. "I'm not going to let you turn this into some viral moment where Matt Damon storms off becomes the headline. That's exactly what you want, isn't it? Colbert adjusted his glasses, a nervous tic betraying his discomfort. I simply asked questions. If they hit a nerve— Cut the act, Damon interrupted, now standing directly across from Colbert's desk. For 15 years I've watched you, respected you. Even when I disagreed with your politics, I admired your intellect and wit. But this? He gestured between them. This isn't the Stephen Colbert who built this show. This is cheap. The studio had gone deathly quiet. Even the production crew stood frozen, cameras rolling on an unscripted confrontation that had veered far from the planned segment. Cheap? Colbert repeated, his trademark smile now strained. I'd call it holding power to account. Isn't that what journalism is supposed to do? Journalism? Damon laughed without humor. Is that what we're calling this ambush? You didn't bring me here to discuss my film or have a genuine conversation. You brought me here to provoke a reaction, to boost your struggling ratings. A ripple went through the audience at this direct hit. Rumors of The Late Show's declining viewership had been circulating for months, with Colbert reportedly under pressure from network executives. My ratings are just fine, Colbert replied, tightly, his composure cracking further. Unlike your last 3 box office performances, Damon shook his head, unruffled by the barb. See, that's the difference between us. I can acknowledge when I've failed, when I've made mistakes. Can you? The question hung in the air, and for a moment, uncertainty flickered across Colbert's face. A production assistant approached the stage cautiously, presumably to suggest a commercial break, but Colbert waved them off. What exactly are you implying? The host asked, voice dropping dangerously low. I'm not implying anything, Damon replied. I'm stating plainly that you're not the same person who took over this desk. Something's changed. Everyone sees it. Your staff, your audience, your guests, we all feel it. This bitter, attacking version of you? It's not working. Colbert's face flushed. So now you're a television expert as well as Hollywood's moral compass? Please, enlighten us all with your infinite wisdom, Matt. I don't claim to be either of those things, Damon said quietly. But I do know what it looks like when someone's lost sight of why they started doing something in the first place. The words landed like a physical blow. For a brief moment, something vulnerable and genuine flashed across Colbert's face. A recognition, perhaps, or a moment of painful clarity, before his defenses slammed back into place. Very profound, Colbert retorted, but his voice had lost its edge. I'm sure that line works well in your movies. It's not a line, Damon replied, now leaning both hands on Colbert's desk. It's concern, from someone who used to consider you an ally. The tension between them had transformed into something more complex than simple antagonism. The audience sensed it too, the atmosphere changing from uncomfortable voyeurism to something that felt almost too personal to witness. An ally, Colbert repeated softly, then gave a short, bitter laugh. That's rich, coming from you. What does that mean? Damon asked, genuinely confused. Colbert stared at him for a long moment, conflict evident in his expression. Then, as if coming to a decision, he turned toward the camera. We'll be right back after these messages, he announced abruptly. The on-air light dimmed, but the cameras continued rolling, capturing what was unfolding. No, Damon said firmly. If you have something to say to me, say it now. On air or off, I don't care. The production team looked frantically between themselves, clearly unsure whether to follow standard procedure or continue filming this unprecedented exchange. Colbert's professional veneer had completely cracked now. You want the truth? Fine. 3 months ago, your people called my producer. They said you'd only appear on the show if certain topics were off limits, including your comments about producers I've personally known who hurt people I care about. People who trusted me to stand up for them. Damon stepped back, genuine shock registering on his face. That's absolutely not true. I never authorized Any restrictions? Save it, Colbert snapped. The email chain was very clear. Your publicist, your agent, they were quite specific about protecting your image. Then they acted without my knowledge, Damon insisted, his expression hardening. Check your facts, Stephen. Call my assistant right now. I have never, in my entire career, demanded topic restrictions. Ever. Something in Damon's absolute certainty gave Colbert pause. The host's eyes narrowed, calculation replacing anger. You expect me to believe your team went rogue? He asked, skepticism evident. What I expect, Damon replied evenly, is basic professional courtesy. Like verifying that kind of claim before ambushing someone on national television. A production assistant approached Colbert, whispering urgently in his ear. The host's expression changed as he listened, confusion replacing certainty. He looked up at Damon with the first hint of doubt in his eyes. We're getting conflicting information, Colbert said carefully. It seems there might have been a miscommunication. A miscommunication, Damon repeated flatly. That's what you're calling this character assassination? The audience, still present despite the supposed commercial break, watched in stunned silence as the confrontation continued to unfold. Social media was already exploding with clips and commentary. The hashtag Colbert-Damon Showdown trending worldwide. If what you're saying is true, Colbert began. It is, Damon interjected firmly. Then I may have acted on incorrect information, Colbert finished, the admission clearly costing him. Damon studied him for a long moment, weighing his next move. The tension between them remained electric, neither man willing to fully back down. The entire studio seemed suspended in that moment, waiting to see which direction this unprecedented situation would take. You know what the irony is, Stephen? Damon finally said, his voice now calm but resonant with disappointment. I came here specifically because I thought your show was the one place where we could have an intelligent, nuanced conversation about the themes in this film. Government overreach, whistleblowers, the cost of standing up for truth. I never imagined I'd end up living it instead. Those words seemed to land with surprising weight. Colbert's expression shifted, the combative edge fading as something more contemplative took its place. For several seconds, the studio remained in perfect silence, the audience barely breathing as they witnessed this raw, unscripted moment between two cultural icons. Well, Colbert finally said, removing his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. That's a fair point. The tension in the room didn't immediately dissipate, but it transformed into something different. Expectation mixed with uncertainty. Is it, though? Damon pressed, not yet ready to let Colbert off the hook. Because from where I'm standing, you were ready to destroy my reputation based on an email you never verified came from me. Colbert replaced his glasses, his movements deliberate. When he looked up, his expression had changed. The theatrical mask of the talk show host was gone, replaced by something more genuine. You're right, he admitted, causing a ripple of surprise through the audience. I should have checked. Should have called you directly. The production team exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to handle this unprecedented scenario. The floor director made a cutting motion across his throat, suggesting they stop filming, but Colbert shook his head slightly. No, let it run, he said to the crew before turning back to Damon. This is exactly what you came here to talk about, isn't it? The cost of truth. The human element behind whistleblowing. Damon studied him, wariness still evident but mixed now with careful consideration. Are you suggesting we turn this train wreck into an actual conversation? He asked. Why not? Colbert replied, gesturing to the guest chair. Unless you'd still prefer to walk out. I wouldn't blame you. The studio held its collective breath as Damon weighed his options. After what seemed like an eternity, he returned to the chair, sitting on its edge, present but not entirely committed. Before we do anything else, I want to understand exactly what happened, Damon said firmly. Who sent that email? Colbert nodded to his producer, who approached with a tablet. The host studied it for a moment before looking up with a grimace. It appears it came from an email address associated with your production company, but not from your personal team or publicist, as I was led to believe. He passed the tablet to Damon, who scanned it with growing indignation. This is from a junior publicity coordinator who was let go 2 months ago, Damon said, voice tight with controlled anger. They had no authority to speak for me. And I should have confirmed that, Colbert acknowledged. Then, after a pause, added, I was looking for a reason to be angry with you. The honesty of the admission caught Damon off guard. Why? Colbert's fingers drummed nervously on his desk. The audience leaned forward collectively, sensing they were witnessing something rarely seen on television: genuine vulnerability. The ratings narrative isn't entirely wrong, Colbert admitted reluctantly. We've been slipping. The network's been pushing for more viral moments, more confrontation, more, he gestured vaguely, drama. So I was your designated punching bag, Damon concluded. You were convenient, Colbert corrected, then winced at his own words. That sounds worse out loud than it did in my head. A ghost of a smile touched Damon's lips. At least it's honest. That's been in short supply lately, Colbert agreed. He looked directly into the camera. Including from me. The audience murmured in response, sensing they were watching something transformative unfold. Colbert turned back to Damon. Your film. It's about a man who sacrifices his career to expose corruption, right? Damon nodded cautiously. That's the simplified version, yes. Tell me about the cost, Colbert said, leaning forward with what appeared to be genuine interest. Not just the professional cost, but the personal one. For a moment, Damon seemed caught off guard by the sudden shift to an actual interview. He studied Colbert, perhaps looking for signs of another trap, before seemingly deciding to engage. That's actually the heart of the film, he began, his passion for the project evident as he leaned forward. Reynolds, my character, doesn't start as a hero. He's complicit in the corruption initially, benefiting from it. His journey is realizing that the system he's profiting from is causing real harm. Not unlike the entertainment industry, Colbert observed quietly. Or late-night television, Damon countered with raised eyebrows. The tension between them had transformed into something electric but no longer hostile, challenging rather than combative. Touché, Colbert conceded, with a hint of his old smile. So what makes him finally speak out? What's his breaking point? As Damon began explaining the character's moral evolution, the audience witnessed something remarkable. The hostility that had defined the earlier exchange gradually dissolving into a conversation of surprising depth and authenticity. Though neither man had fully dropped his guard, there was a growing mutual respect evident in their exchange. The hardest scene to film, Damon was saying, now fully engaged, was when Reynolds realizes that by staying silent, he's become the very thing he once despised. That resonates, Colbert said quietly, almost to himself. Their conversation continued with increasing fluidity, touching on themes of integrity, public persona versus private conviction, and the courage required to admit mistakes. What had begun as character assassination had somehow transformed into one of the most compelling interviews either man had experienced. As they approached the segment's end, Colbert set aside his cards entirely. I owe you an apology, he said simply. Not just for tonight, but for what this industry sometimes demands of all of us. Apology accepted, Damon replied after a moment. Though I suspect your producers might not share my sentiment. Colbert glanced toward the production booth where several executives were indeed watching, with expressions ranging from confusion to outright alarm. Let them worry, he said with a dismissive wave. This is what the show should be. Real conversations, not manufactured outrage. He extended his hand across the desk. Thank you for not walking out. Damon clasped it firmly. Thank you for remembering who you are. As the show cut to commercial, social media was already exploding with clips and commentary. What began as Colbert-Damon showdown quickly evolved into authentic TV and real talk, with viewers praising both men for transforming what could have been a career-damaging confrontation into a moment of rare television authenticity. Behind the scenes, network executives huddled in emergency meetings, unsure whether to discipline Colbert for deviating so dramatically from the planned segment or to capitalize on what was quickly becoming the most discussed late-night moment in years. The aftermath played out over subsequent days. Ratings for the episode shattered records. Think pieces analyzing the exchange filled entertainment websites, most lauding the rare glimpse of truth in an increasingly manufactured media landscape. Colbert's team was divided. Some resigned in protest over the network's push for confrontational content, while others rallied around the host's apparent recommitment to substance over spectacle. As for Matt Damon, he declined all requests to further discuss the incident, save for one brief statement. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones we're most reluctant to have. A week later, Colbert opened his show with an unprecedented monologue addressing the incident directly. "Last week, something unusual happened here," he told the audience, his usual comedic affectations absent. "We had an unplanned moment of honesty, and it turns out you all preferred that to the alternative." Message received. The camera pulled back to reveal a redesigned set, simpler, less ostentatious, as Colbert continued, "Tonight, we're trying something different. Less spectacle, more substance. It might work, it might fail spectacularly. Either way, it'll be authentic." As ratings stabilized at levels higher than before the confrontation, industry analysts noted a subtle shift across late-night television. Less gotcha journalism, more genuine exchange. It wasn't a revolution, but it was a reminder of what audiences truly hungered for behind the flash and distraction. The Colbert-Damon confrontation had become something few could have predicted, a catalyst for reflection in an industry rarely given to introspection. And perhaps most surprisingly, it had transformed two men's public personas, not through careful PR management, but through the far riskier territory of unvarnished truth.